just a minute and recognize a very, very special guest that is here with us this morning. Dr. Molina got his PhD from Berkeley, went on to do a postdoc at the University of California at Irvine, and did some research that ultimately led to him receiving the Nobel Prize for Chemistry. That work was on the impact of chlorofluorocarbons on stratospheric ozone. A landmark work in so many ways. It alerted us to an imminent crisis. It showed us a cautionary lesson on how a very innocent thing that we do, spraying a little can down here, could have such far-reaching global impacts. And it also showed us that as an international community, we could come together, sign a treaty, and agree to do something to make the world a better place. Mario is a friend of mine for many, many decades, and we are very honored not only to have him here this morning, but he is going to be receiving an honorary degree from Duke University tomorrow. I am going to put him on the spot and ask him to just come up and say a few words of welcome to everybody here.
Thank you, Bill, very much for your kind remarks. First of all, I want to congratulate you, class of 2009. I also want to remind you that you are a very special class, a very special generation. Why? Well, we do have some very serious problems in our planet, as you are surely aware of, that have to do with the depletion of natural resources. See, we are now over 6.5 billion people on the planet, and we'll probably reach something like 9 billion in a few years. And one problem we have, it's only about a fourth of that population that has sufficiently high standard of living and so on, that has caused most of the depletion of natural resources in terms of damage to the environment. But we have the rest, the 3/4 of the population that certainly have the right to also reach a very high standard of living. And the pattern, as we see it now, is that they want to copy what has happened with developed countries at the moment. They want to copy the same consumption patterns and so on. That just cannot happen. We would need 3 or 4 planets Earth to provide the required natural resources to sustain such patterns. So something really has to change, and that's why your generation is a very special one. We have a huge responsibility to change the way things work. I could summarize that. There are 2 reasons, sufficient each of them by themselves, for these changes. One is it's just best for the economy. It's much more costly to pay for the damages. I work with climate change, for example, the damages would be enormous if we simply let things go. So it's much cheaper to prevent, to take the necessary actions to change the way society functions. That's an enormous challenge. But the second reason is really an ethical one. Our generation, mine and yours, has a huge responsibility, which is not to leave for future generations a planet where it is much harder to reach the standard of living that we have now. So it's indeed an enormous challenge, because we need a revolution in the way people think, the way people act. We need to raise a global consciousness about the environment, limitation of natural resources, and so on. But I'm actually optimistic in spite of this enormous challenge, because, well, as Ninja mentioned, we do have a president with stratospheric ozone. The world was able to come together and do something about it through the Montreal Protocol, which is working remarkably well. The bad news is that's the only example we have. On the other hand, it is indeed possible to have these changes. And the change now is that we see that at the levels of heads of states. I know a few of them, certainly President Obama, President Calderon in Mexico, some prime ministers in Europe and so on. And for the first time, they're really taking these problems seriously. So that's the level that you need to begin to have real changes. We have high expectations, for example, for Copenhagen at the end of this year. So to reach some sort of global agreements in connection with climate change. But remind you, we have to look at all these problems of limitations of natural resources together. We're really damaging the planet with many different case of unsustainable development. So let me just end by, again, congratulating all of you, wishing you the best for your careers, reminding you that of this responsibility to work not just for yourselves, for your communities, but really for the entire planet. So best of luck.